If you're looking at Fort Mill, South Carolina, you've probably heard two things. One, the schools are great, and two, the taxes are lower than the North Carolina side of the Charlotte metro area. Well, both are basically true, but the real cost of living here has some line items that nobody puts on a spreadsheet. So let's break it down to what it actually costs to live in Fort Mill, a suburb of Charlotte Metro in 2026. And that's the home prices, the taxes, and the stuff that surprises people after they move. I'm Laurie Plyler with Keller Williams Connected, and my husband Josh and I help families relocate all across the Charlotte metro area, both of the Carolinas, north and south. So here's the plan. First, home prices and what your budget actually buys, then property taxes and the South Carolina advantage, then the hidden costs, ways, commuting, and a few others. And at the end, the honest answer to whether Fort Mill is cheaper than living in Charlotte. So let's start with home prices. Okay, big picture first. The overall cost of living in Fort Mill lands roughly in line with or a touch above the national average. And here's the key insight. Almost all of that comes from one category: housing. Groceries, utilities, healthcare, transportation are all in relatively the same ballpark as the rest of the country. Utilities actually run a little low below average, but when people say Fort Mill is expensive, what they almost always mean is the housing market. So let's look at that. As of early 2026, the median sale price in Fort Mill is sitting around the low 500s, right around about $505,000, and prices have been basically flat to slightly down year over year. After years of fast climbing, some of the fastest in the country, homes are taking about 1.5 to 2 months to sell, so it's more of a balanced market than a frenzy that was a couple years ago. Here's how the price tiers break down for relocating buyers. So what you get: entry level, $375K to $525K. That's going to be townhomes and smaller single family homes in established areas with tighter inventory. Then you have the move up family, $525 to $900K. That's the core relocation range, about 2,500 to 4,500 square feet in good school zones, often with HOA amenities. Then you have the luxury custom category, which is $900K to about $2.5 million. This is custom builds on larger lots. True high end, which means knowing the builder. The sweet spot for most relocating families is that middle tier, roughly about $525,000 to $900,000, which gets you a 2,500 to 4,500 square foot home in a strong school zone, often with neighborhood amenities. And the honest comparison, that same budget inside Charlotte's in-town neighborhoods buys you noticeably less house. So you're trading walkability for space and newer construction. Now, the reason most people are even looking at Fort Mill, besides that, property taxes. South Carolina assesses your primary home at just 4% of its market value. That's the owner-occupied assessment ratio. And York County's real estate millage for 2026 is roughly 78 cents per $100 of that assessed value. In plain English, the effective property tax rate on a Fort Mill home typically lands somewhere under 1% of market value, and it varies a bit by zip code and school district within the town. Compare that to the North Carolina side, where homes are assessed at full market value, and on a similar home, you're often looking at a meaningfully bigger annual tax bill. That gap is the single biggest driver pushing buyers across the line. Okay, one caveat for investors and second home buyers: that 4% rate is only for your primary residence. A second home or rental is assessed at 6%, which does change the math quite a bit. Here's where I'll be straight with you, because most agents skip this. South Carolina has a state income tax, and at higher incomes, its top bracket actually comes in above North Carolina's flat rate tax. So the property tax win can get partly offset by income tax depending on what you earn. For retirees though, South Carolina is quite friendly. There are significant deductions on retirement income. The point? Well, the which side is cheaper answer genuinely depends on your income, your home price, and your stage of life. It's truly not one size fits all. Okay, the line items that surprise people after they move in. First, HOAs. Fort Mill is heavily HOA driven. Basic communities might run $40 to $80 a month, but full amenity neighborhoods with pools, clubhouses, and trails, which is pretty normal to find in this area, can run $400 to $500 a month, depending. Always factor that in from day one of your search because it changes your real monthly payment and is important to consider. Second, commuting. If you're working in Charlotte, budget for the drive. That means gas and time. The I-77 corridor has express toll lanes that can buy back time during rush hour, but that's a real monthly cost to plan for. Third, summer electric bills. Those hot, humid Carolina summers mean serious air conditioning. And fourth, a nice one, Fort Mill's strong public schools take a lot of pressure off of the private school question. Charlotte area private tuition can run $15,000 to $35,000 a year per child, so a top public school district is, in effect, money back in your pocket. So, the question everyone actually came for, is Fort Mill cheaper than living in Charlotte? Well, for most owner-occupant families, once you account for the South Carolina property tax structure and the school district, the answer is generally yes. It tends to be more affordable than living inside the city of Charlotte for a comparable home. But, and you know there'd be a but, it flips at higher incomes because of state income tax, and it depends on the exact home and neighborhood. Which is exactly why I run the numbers per household instead of quoting one average. If you're weighing a move to Fort Mill and you want your real numbers, your home price, your income, your tax picture on both sides of the line, well, that's exactly what Josh and I do. There's a link in the description to book a quick call and we'll map it out for your situation. Absolutely no pressure. If you're earlier in research, grab my free relocation newsletter for neighborhood and market updates. And check out my video comparing the North Carolina and South Carolina sides if you haven't picked a side yet. Subscribe for a new Charlotte area video every week, and I'll see you in the next one.